There we go. Welcome, everyone. I hope you guys are having an incredible day. Today, we're going to talk about the law of cycles. Welcome back to our challenge. This month, we are doing a very unique challenge, looking at the laws of the universe and looking at how we can integrate them into our everyday life, into the embodiment of ourselves. And more importantly, in order to understand how important really these laws are and how they affect the way our lives express themselves, the way we express ourselves, the patterns of information that embeds in our DNA, and how we express that information. In addition to how essentially our lives manifest, how they unfold, the design of our lives and the lessons that are available to us in our life experiences. Essentially, the whole purpose of this is to understand the incredible intelligence of this self-organizing system in which we participate in, which allows us to understand that as humans, we are more than just random expressions, okay? We are so deeply, deeply interconnected within ourselves, internally, within one another, and even in the greater sphere, interdimensionally, collectively, we are actually interacting with one another on a larger scale. So what we want to understand is, how do we use these laws in order to embody and to access our highest expression, which is what we're all about here on this channel. And we call it the apotheosis of man, which means the highest state of ascension that one can reach, okay? So welcome everyone that's tuning in, Leonika Yoli, Miss Kate, 108, so wonderful to see you. I'm going to send out a quick shout out to people. Some people said they're not getting my notifications, so let's go ahead and send out a quick email to everyone that wants to join us on the live today. How's everybody doing? I had some incredible questions this week, and I want to make sure that I answer them because they are truly amazing. So let me just do a quick shout out here, let people know that we're live. All right, so while I'm sending that out, really quickly, we had a question here. Let me find that question for a second. Okay, the question was activation of karmic cycles. Hold on, let me pull up that question. Right, let's go ahead and share this. All right. Okay, so have you seen the recent Schumann resonance? Yes, I have. It's just absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. I don't know if any of you have seen the Schumann resonance recently, but it is literally creating these geometric patterns, these repetitive geometric patterns. And the interesting thing about this is that at the beginning of this month, now, I don't know if you guys had a chance to check out my last challenge, but we talked about some of the major changes that are happening in the world around us. But this year is paramount in creating a foundation for the change that we're going to be going through in the next couple of years. From here into 2024 will be the foundational years of major transformation, because we are vibrationally moving through higher bands of frequency, okay? So when we see these kinds of incredible braided frequencies, it is so incredible because they're literally patterns that are being expressed from the DNA of the earth, and everything that we pick up on earth, that we're perceiving through the filters of earth, is essentially helping us understand the greater picture, okay? So these self-organized systems, if you look at that pattern, the pattern of that Schumann resonance, and actually it kind of goes in alignment to what we're going to be talking about today, because we need to understand how we are affected by these energies. The energies that we are passing through essentially are majorly causing shifts in the subconscious mind. Okay, that's the most important thing to understand, that these shifts are affecting the subconscious mind. So let me just quickly pull that up. Take a look at this beautiful braided frequency energies. Look at how these patterns that are created. Okay, so if you know how to read geometric structures, geometric expressions, okay, it's never before seen such an incredible pattern that the Schumann resonance created. And, you know, it really speaks to the energy. Those of you that are in tune with energies of the universe probably get a sense to how this is feeling. But this entire week, this entire month, the energies have been so potent, so nourishing, so expansive, so joyful. It's like everything is kind of self-organizing into some kind of order. Major changes are occurring in the lives, restructuring, changes of patterns of behaviors, reawakening consciousness, and a really profound pull into a deeper connection with the self. Okay, so a lot of these beautiful energies that we're seeing here are really speaking to those changes that we're going through. So let me go ahead and actually I'm going to start sharing my live. But before I start that, I want to welcome all you guys and also take some questions. Let me know if you have any questions. I am going to go ahead and open the last question that came up here because it was really important. Alexander asked, should we just never be in friendships or relationships or even experience anything ever again if they are all just distractions from us feeling alone or separate from the shadow work? What's the point in doing anything if it's all just attachment to the physical and expressions of survival? Right. So actually, this is actually one of the most important questions because a lot of people experience this overwhelming uncertainty in this point of navigating these universal truths, right? Because they really push the human to go outside of its natural human everyday experiences. Okay, we have to go beyond that, beyond the illusion. The illusion is the comfort of our lives, the structure of our lives, everything that we know to be true is comfortable. And when we have to go beyond that, it starts to get uncomfortable because then we start to question, well, what's the point of having these relationships? What's the point of these difficult experiences that are happening with us? But actually, every single one. So first, if you understand the laws of the universe, all experiences are brought together by resonance. That's number one. So when these experiences are brought together by resonance, it means that there is something that needs to be, you know, if you no longer wish to repeat those patterns, to change. It's all about experience. This is where the soul enters into a higher level of maturity, where it begins to look at its experiences as just that, not applying any meaning, not needing to, because remember that the ego is the one that wants to identify with some sort of meaning or some acceleration, ascension. Even our own spiritual concepts can be things that the ego is trying to attain, but it's difficult to embody nothingness. It's difficult to embody the 0 point because the one that is feeling useless and the one that is asking, could be asking this kind of a question, like, what's the point then, is the ego, because the ego begins to feel useless, essentially, okay? The identity feels useless. So here is one of the things, it's one of the shadows of the soul that we go through in these awakening processes, that we need to become such deep friends with the unknown that being and embodying this physical vessel is an enjoyable journey in all of its unknown experiences, in all of its infinite potential. Okay, so embodying in the physical and just surrendering to the experiences that are happening by consciously choosing always what is good for this organism, but also what is good for the collective. And that's where the perspective begins to change. And now the human shifts from the purpose of feeding the ego, the sensation body, all the parts that want to be satiated by experience, by beautiful things, by the senses, okay, by even just even our chemicals in our body, right? We shift the attention now from the more egoic human experience into an expansive collective, where we now fine tune our direction from those physical senses into the 0 point, and you actually open other senses that allows you to feel the collective. And the next level, the spiritual maturity, is to begin to tune into the collective and begin to make life choices that are supportive of yourself and the collective. And it's a whole different thing, because your choices now are looking at all the truths that are usually really, really hard for the human to have to accept. You know, we think that, you know, ourselves, we go through maturing processes to become functional adults, right? In so many different ways. So we have to learn a lot about a lot of things in life, right? How to survive, how to get things, how to not get things, how to make changes in our life, how to maintain relationships, how to raise children. So in that same way, we are maturing as a human in the human race in order to be able to carry this human race into a higher existence. But our purpose is not to carry the race into the higher purpose. The purpose is to exist in harmony. That is the thing. To be able to experience infinite potential, to experience the unknown, and maintain harmony internally and with everything that is external. Okay, so that's the thing. And remember that any time that our subconscious mind wants to go into survival mode, into absolute nihilism, and trust me, I've been there too. I've been in the nihilist phase of awakening, where you're like, what's the point? You know, you have all these ideas of all these things that seem so finite, but when you begin to understand the impact of every thought that you have, every action in the greater whole, you understand the responsibility. And it's like that joke, you know, he understood the assignment. The assignment is not just to be lost in the human sensation body. It is actually many levels, many layers of possible creator states that we actually have the ability to embody. And there's nothing wrong with either of these embodiments. You can choose to experience the physical, and it's completely fine, because what happens is that the organism as a whole, the human race, because of its self-organizing mechanism, always brings things back into balance, always brings the whole back into a harmony. And I guess this is a very interesting way to look at this, because it allows us to transcend feelings of helplessness, feelings of disconnect, disassociation with our emotional traumas, and, you know, help us move forward. Okay, next question. Do we have just the clearing meditation recorded on YouTube for daily use, please, Geraldine? Yes, Annette, I am having somebody work on that as we speak, so I should have it delivered by tomorrow. And I will post just the meditation portion of yesterday's video as an audio. And actually, it'll be one of the first videos that I'll have on a podcast, meditation podcast that I'm working on. Okay, so I'll have that out for you soon. Okay. All right. All right, guys, let's talk about today. Today, we're going to talk about cycles. We're going to talk about the law of cyclical patterns. This is one of the most important aspects of putting together all of these concepts, because when you understand that everything that we're experiencing in this universe is cyclical, you can start to understand how powerful your ability to choose things becomes. Okay, how so? Let me show you. Let me show you what this is all about. Okay, so I want to introduce you a concept called cosmic resonance. Okay, very, very interesting cosmic resonance. Okay, so every single one of the planets is functioning and moving around the solar system. And as each one of these planets move around the solar system, they create geometric patterns. Okay. And these geometric patterns essentially are so incredibly beautiful because they create complex geometries that allow the pathways of how each one of these planets are essentially moving around the sun. Okay, why is this important? Because what we have found out is that through the cosmic resonance, not only do they create these incredible patterns, but what happens is that, see, these are the patterns that are being created. Okay, and it's been coined the music of spheres because they create these geometric patterns. But every time these planets go around the sun, these geometric patterns that are created are actually calculated at exactly the sequence of the Fibonacci. Okay, so this is so beautiful, at least to me, and I hope it is to you, because it helps us understand something. We talked about how the universe functions in a spiral motion. Okay, we talked about that. The spiral motion of the universe, as I mentioned, is moving at the pace of a Fibonacci sequence. And I'm going to explain that to you today, what that means, because some of you have asked me, how exactly does that function? Well, every single one of the cycles is equating at exactly mathematical calculation 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and 29. This is the calculations that it creates when these planets go around the sun. And we see this spiral movement is not only prevalent in our solar system, but also in the structure of DNA in our own bodies. Okay, so the way that this DNA strand is calculated mathematically, it follows the Fibonacci sequence as well. Okay, the space calculations between each one of the coils, not only do they create these Fibonacci sequences, but also the same geometric patterns. So the same geometric patterns that your DNA is creating are in alignment with the geometric patterns that each one of these planets creates around the solar system. Isn't that beautiful? Okay. Now, to take it another level, to understand these laws of cycle, that this universe itself is also moving around the universe to create these patterns. Okay. So here is a picture of the solar system. Essentially, when the sun is moving around, we understood that it creates these spiral-like movements. Okay, so these spaces in between each one of these bands of frequency that are spiraling around the sun are at that equation. Our physical bodies are also at that equation. Okay, the way that energy is spiraling through our physical body, it also creates a spiral motion. Let's take it another notch, talking about the DNA. Again, when this spiral motion, the oscillation of DNA creates geometric patterns that creates these beautiful, incredibly perfect geometric expressions of DNA. Okay. And each one of our physical bodies holds on to these geometric structures that are actually, they're speaking to us, because each geometric structure is saying something. It's a vibrational frequency. It's a communication. In your DNA is encoded your vibrational signature and the signature of your ancestors. Okay, this is all this incredible photographs and geometric structures of DNA are residing in your physical body. Now, if you take a look at molecules that are growing in plants and in nature, we find the same. We find the same patterns of geometry within the expressions of these geometric structures. And they are all abiding by the same mathematical calculations of the Fibonacci sequence. So this calculation is one of the universe's most powerful equations. And it is one of the laws of this universe that we begin to see in the patterns of all things in this universe. Okay, so this is incredibly important, because if you understand the meaning of this power, the meaning of this pattern, if you understand the meaning of the expression of this self-organizing system, it means that there is an order to our existence that transcends our logical mind, and not even, because it's so incredibly easy to experience this. But every single one of these equations of the Fibonacci are how our universe is expressed. The universe is expressed in this natural, organized system. And I'm going macro, micro, from the cells in your body to patterns of nature. The way that birds migrate also follow this pattern around the earth. The way that weather storms and weather systems manifest and unfold also follow this. Okay, so many, I mean, I could go on and on. The way that bees create their hives, the way that mycelia creates communication networks underneath trees, the way that birds are flying in sync. Okay. In that same way, these patterns, these self-similar patterns, create a powerful self-organizing system. And so the same is in our body, but it's also psychological in the subconscious mind. Okay. And the way that our physical body begins to merge with the non-physical, it also expresses in this Fibonacci sequence. So just the way the universe is moving in this spiral motion, multiverses are interacting with one another, human bodies are moving in this same cyclical pattern, the way that life force moves in the body. And not only that, but collectively, groups of humans that come together in large groups are also being affected by these kinds of patterns of frequency, okay? Because actually it's been studied, patterns of large groups of people also follow these kinds of patterns. And we can look at the study of the morphogenetic field that discusses how when certain groups are, for example, in scientific labs, are learning how to discover certain procedures, other labs also pick up that information. And these are labs in other part of the world, okay? So in other words, it's just an example to help you understand that there is a network that we connect to. It is the non-physical network that we connect to through the morphogenetic field, through quantum non-locality. And that quantum non-locality works expressly through the resonance of the organisms that interconnect each other. Okay, so our physical bodies, the way that we are moving collectively on this planet, we also follow those patterns when it comes to the reincarnation cycle. I'm actually not showing you that. Okay, I was talking about this. Okay, so the intelligence that puts these together, the way that birds are moving, but also patterns in how we are reincarnating on this planet is also cyclical. Okay. The way that we actually choose to incarnate into the physical body by resonance, depending on what we are experiencing as a greater whole, is also cyclical. So when you incarnate into this physical body, you are entering into a cycle, in the middle of a cycle that you have already been experiencing and that you are experiencing simultaneously through your family members. This is also occurring in the bigger picture through the hybridization program. The regeneration of this organism that we call a planet is being reseeded with soul essence in order to maintain the survival of this dimensional layer. The overlay of these different matrix holograms that we participate in are interconnected through the morphogenetic field, and again through that quantum non-locality once again. So this profound cyclical patterns are affecting micro and macro, every part of our lives. Let's bring it home now. Let's bring it now into the physical body. Okay, the way that we repeat trauma when we are traumatized as children, the programming that we receive, the emotions that we have inside of the mother's womb are things that we repeat over and over again in our lives in an incredible cyclical manner. The way that we express dating patterns, okay, we are repeating dating patterns until we break those patterns. We are in resonance with the same people. It can be the trauma you had with mother. It's the trauma that you have with your partner. It's the trauma you have with your colleague. It's the trauma you have with your own feminine aspect. Okay, so these cyclical patterns, it's very important to understand that, because people always wonder, why do I keep having, I can't break free from this, this agreement, this contractual blockage that I'm not able to transcend it. Well, in order to break these patterns, it's layers of patterns that have to be broken. And essentially where we find the root is in the subconscious mind. It is in the morphogenetic field that literally brought us into existence, because the morphogenetic field is encoded with the DNA of the earth that brings our essence, our soul, in order to experience that. Every single human on this planet is absolutely important and essential to the collective harmony. There isn't a single human that exists on this planet that doesn't belong or that isn't in resonance in some way with the things that are occurring in this planet. And the thing is that we exist on many dimensions, many planets perhaps, and that we are carrying out cyclical patterns, and we're doing that simultaneously. So if we want to talk about transcending, some people say, oh, I no longer want to live in this matrix, I want to transcend the matrix. Well, what you're talking about is that a fractal of yourself essentially will come into alignment with a higher vibrational frequency in order to leave the physical vessel and travel in a dimension that is more in alignment with another kind of experience. There is no better or worse experience. These are all just different kinds of experiences. Now, something really beautiful that I want to share with you, which is why I talked about this, the spherical, the spiral movements of this, is that we essentially are these geometric expressions. Let me see if I can find this video. Okay, very interesting. I want to share with you really quickly the video of what that looks like, of these planets. Okay, one moment. Let me find that for you. Aha, here we go. Let's see if I can share this with you. Okay, go ahead and take a look at this, right? If you guys are looking at the screen, to begin to see the time lapse of the Earth Okay, so every single one of this orbital resonance, 5 minus 2 equals 3. Okay, so the Fibonacci sequence is creating this pattern here. Let me go ahead and expand this so you guys can see that.
The time it takes for Neptune to orbit the Sun 3 times is basically equivalent to the time it takes for Pluto to orbit it only twice. Now, before we see the result of this model, let's hypothesize what we expect to see. So the orbital resonances of the two planets is 3 to 2, and 3 minus 2 is 1. Hence, based on our previous findings, we can deduce that the number of petals that the resonance shape will have is exactly 1. Now, let's see if we're correct. Well, from the illustration, the number of petals traced out is clearly only 1. Furthermore, the numbers 1 to 3 are also consecutive numbers on the Fibonacci sequence. Isn't this pattern just incredible? So, to summarize what we have explored so far, the orbits of Venus and Earth, Venus and Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, and Neptune and Pluto produce quite appealing arrangements of petal-like shapes, and the number of these petals are in accordance with the orbital resonances of the planets. Additionally, we have also found that these three numbers follow the Fibonacci sequence in an ordered fashion.
All right, so you guys get the idea. Essentially, what I want to show you is that these patterns of universal patterns are found micro and macro in all organisms in the universe. This is something that we need to pay attention to, because when we are trying to break these subconscious patterns that we are repeating over and over again, this is exactly what we're encountering. Okay, so our subconscious mind is also storing data because the shape of the universe is a spiral. Okay, the way that information, in order to condense massive amounts of information, it becomes coiled. Okay, that's the most intelligent design in order to hold massive amounts of information. So what that means is that the pattern in which information is stored is also in this coil expression. And that coil, that spinning, that spiral repetitive pattern, we're also seeing it in the patterns of evolution on this earth. Okay, so we go through cycles on this planet where, because we are reaching further reaches of each one of these cycles has a feminine and a masculine aspect. Okay. Remember that in order for spirals to move, there has to be a kind of like a propulsion move that allows that spiral to be moving. Okay. So in order for that to occur, it's the duality, the dualistic nature of these expressions are what allow that propulsion. It creates a pull. And that pull is what creates this spiral motion. We are also experiencing that in the way that time, the time that we create, man-made time, is developing. Okay, so from the origin of time, from the origin of the conception of life on this planet, we can trace back historically, and this is also found in DNA, and the sequencing of DNA, we can also see these patterns pretty quickly. But when you look at these historical timelines through our DNA, through the mitochondria, actually, is how we're able to trace this back, is that civilizations have reached high points, and then they have also dropped. Okay, so these patterns of reaching high points of evolution are occurring every time that the spiral peaks at the highest vibrational frequency range. And the furthest away we are from the point of entering into a next octave of vibrational frequency, that is actually where we start to experience major shifts, because all of the organisms that are traveling in that spiral motion essentially have to change. And this is why there are DNA changes and mutations in DNA, depending on the cycles of evolution that we are moving through. Every new cycle, okay, so remember that every single one of these spirals, the one that is furthest away from this next octave, the octaves are always here at the spinal part of the spiral cord. Every time that we are furthest away, the vibrational frequency lowers. It goes into the slowest wave point. Every time it reaches the apex point of entering into a higher octave, it increases tremendously. Okay, this is the same way that we see the contraction and expansion nature of the universe, and it's the same way that we experience the expansion and contraction of our field when our vibrational frequency changes as well. Exact same patterns, contraction and expansion. So these contraction and expansion patterns that we see in the universal movements are essentially what allows us to trace back evolutionary patterns of cycles of evolution in history. Every time that we are all collectively moving to a high apex point into a next octave, like this is why people say we are going from the fourth to the fifth dimensional plane. And in a sense we are, but actually, because we are multidimensional, remember that we look like these little spheres. Okay, spheres within spheres. That's what we look like. This is literally our organism. One organism looks like this, and it's interconnected to each other, all other organisms. So because the nature of this spiral movement that creates these toroidal expressions of life force that create these kinds of force fields, these spherical force fields, essentially they are all shifting in their DNA. Every time new information is input into the organism, there is a mutation in the organism. But the mutations are not necessarily like your blood type is changing or something like this. I'm talking about the subtle shifts in your vibrational signature as you evolve. This is why it was so important to discuss the other day when we worked with our crown chakra in breaking karmic contracts. Why? Because all this information that makes up everything that you are within the spheres that you're holding, which remember that your body essentially looks like a giant web of fractals of yourself. So what is actually moving through these dimensions is this giant web of fractals. When these fractals, when you wake up consciousness of all these fractals, when you integrate, when you bring them online into equivalent conscious states of co-creation, you literally expand your light interdimensionally into all dimensional layers. Okay, so the way that we essentially look is that all of these lights begin to shift, and these are the mutations that I'm talking about. What happens is that because we have different points of energy, different fractals of ourselves exist in different dimensional layers, which means that they exist in different frequencies. When we begin to shift into a higher octave, These are the frequencies that come online. They become activated. This is what it means to activate DNA. Every time one of these fractals becomes aware of itself through your physical vessel, you are activating DNA, because that is DNA. That's a holographic expression of your DNA. So if you have an encounter, an interdimensional dream where a being comes to you and you interact with it, right there is an incredible shift in your vibrational frequency where your entire organism is aligning to that dimensional layer. That's what it means to activate DNA. And what that does is the activation of that DNA allows you to begin to expand your light beyond this dimensional layer. Okay. And as I mentioned, your higher chakras begin to come online. Every single one of these chakras that you see that has different color frequencies, they're matching the dots that are in this field, because they're, for example, the green dot is existing within this dimensional layer. It could be 14, 12 dimensional layer. And the higher you begin to increase in your octave of frequencies, the more expanded your field becomes. Like you really become an expanded field until essentially you become one with all. And the process of that is moving through the spiral motion of this natural evolutionary pattern. The natural evolutionary pattern creates geometric shapes. You create geometric shapes with your life and your life choices. If you think that your life is random, there is no such thing. Every single thing that occurs in your life is functioning by the self-organized patterns of co-creation. And this is why I tell you that, you know, to embody stress, anxiety, fear, is actually, you know, it doesn't play a lot of role. It doesn't really do too much in order to change your experiences. Okay, that's why it's really, really important to understand that you can actually transcend these limiting experiences, or what we perceive as experiences that are, you know, troublesome for you, traumatic experiences. The idea is that we begin to, transcend these patterns. So what happens when you transcend patterns? Okay, what happens is that your vibrational frequency begins to shift into another octave. Now, there are two ways to exit this dimensional plane. Either you lower your vibrational frequency so much that the organism comes out of harmonious balance with this greater whole, and essentially you get sick and die, or you activate into the highest expression in where you become a self-organized system. And this is what's called the rainbow body. Okay. When we embody the rainbow body, right now your body looks like a rainbow, but it looks like a convoluted rainbow. It's like colors are everywhere. Sometimes there's holes, there's imbalanced expressions of our field. We are completely dormant in some layers of our own body because we are unaware of parts of ourselves. The more that the human gets to know itself, the more that it becomes, it expands its light, which means that it becomes aware of itself in all dimensional layers. Okay, and that expression, that profound realization. Oh, is my screen sharing stop? Sorry, technical issues here. That profound realization that you are. Can you guys see my screen? My technology is not cooperating. Yeah, you can see it. All right. So the ability to come into the rainbow body, this is what the Tibetans call the rainbow body. And many ancient cultures talked about this incredible alignment. When you come into the alignment, your vibrational frequency is so high that the body begins to dematerialize. And there have been videos of Rinpoches and lamas that have literally just dissolved from the physical body, and all that is left is either the clothing, or the bones, or the shell of the body. But through history, this has been recorded, and also it's depicted by Jesus's resurrection. Okay, the resurrection, which a lot of times is misconstrued, but essentially that symbolism of the resurrection, the death, and then the rebirth of Jesus from the cross, is a powerful, powerful symbolism for many things, but particularly the cycles of life and death, of regeneration, that we abide by. We abide by that law of regeneration because energy never dies. Energy never is erased. We are just being transmuted, or we are transforming into another kind of form, into another vessel. There is a transmutation process that is occurring from one range of frequency wavelength into another range of frequency wavelength, almost as if what is changing is the speed at which you are oscillating as a vibrational frequency expression. And so these are the two ways of exiting this dimensional plane. And neither of them are right or wrong. It completely depends on you, but there are consequences, there are repercussions to these exit modes. And why is it important to understand the exit modes? Because we exit the body every night, okay? Every single night that you go to sleep, you are leaving your physical vessel in order for your soul to navigate. All of the major ancient cultures and civilizations through history revere death as a form of understanding the patterns of life and death and regeneration that we experience in dream state, which is why every single shaman of every culture and origin on this planet talks of dreams as one of the most important elements of understanding and translating vibrational, non-physical experiences as part of a human spiritual journey. Because when we leave the body, we are actually accessing everything that is in this giant spheres and spheres and spheres of information. We are navigating this, okay? So if you want to know what you're doing in dream time, well, just look at this little sphere here to look at all the different points of access that the human has. The way that the brain processes these informations is based on the vibrational frequency of the individual. If the individual has a lot of blockages, stagnation, has no self-awareness, hasn't done any shadow work, not aware and cultivating the awareness of their multidimensional body, then the way that they connect to this information will be very limited. It will be limited, and it will be through filters. Okay, so this is another very important part to understand about these cycles of regeneration, that what holds and what makes the difference between one cycle and another is the filter and the way that we move through that filter. Because the way that you move through that filter is, once again, in a spiral motion. Now, the way that you are moving in your spiral depends on your vibrational frequency. If your oscillation is low, the way that you move and you leave the body will be very sluggish, and it will be very entangled. See? In the same way that this delta wave represents detached awareness, healing, and sleep, we are also in dream state, not lucid, not conscious. We are not able to translate and understand the things that we are experiencing in out-of-body experiences. Lucidity, training lucidity is number 3 on the priority list. Okay, number 1 is to connect with your physical body, be in your body, have mastery over the body. Number 2 is have mastery over your emotions and perceptions. And number 3 is to have mastery over your dream state. Okay, top 3 important things that the human organism has to master, or has the invitation to master, rather, in this physical body, okay, through this human experience. As we begin to elevate the vibrational frequency, every single one of these brain waves allows and changes the geometric structure of the physical body. We talked about the geometric expression of harmonies and vibrational frequencies. Let's see if we can pull that up again. Every single one, actually, I think it's right here. Oh yeah, here it is. Every single one of the frequencies that we are oscillating at creates a different geometric form, which either allows you to have proper implosion, which means that the wave is collapsing in order to allow for you to enter into a higher octave of vibrational frequency. But we can't enter into a next octave if we are not matching, okay? Or we enter into the octave that we match. So if your vibrational frequency is pretty low, you will not have a successful death. This is why we talk about successful death. And the person that talks about this incredibly, but also in a complex manner, in terms of physics, is my beloved friend Dan Winter, who talks about how to have a successful death by going through this portal, right? Which we become wormholes. Essentially, we essentially become white and black holes, depending on how our bodies are moving, in which we can exit the body and experience the next. When we do not exit the body in this proper spiral motion, remember, spirals, the cyclical patterns, we get tangled into the physical 3D matrix, and you can become a ghost, for example. You become fractalized because the majority of your essence is at a low frequency. Your soul is at a high. Of course, it's going to go on to its next destination. But a lot of fractals of yourself will be maintained in this dimensional layer, and they will be kind of locked in because the conscious awareness isn't even there. So what happens is that we end up leaving fragments of ourselves, fractals of ourselves in many dimensional layers. This is how we become fractalized, okay? So when we have unsuccessful deaths for many lifetimes, you become more and more fractalized, which means you become more and more entangled in this matrix, in this three-dimensional layer. And it really requires, so this is something that will never be talked about, and I've never seen it being talked about, but you know, it's something that when I understood this, I finally understood why it was important to connect with your hybrid children, for those of you that have contact, or for those of you that are having angelic visitations, activations of Arcturians, whatever it is that you're encountering in your highest dimensional layer, filter, is a portal into an entire range of your own DNA. Because not only does your DNA become activated, but it can also become, in a sense, stagnant. That when we hold a lot of dense, fractalized fragments of ourselves that are trapped in many dimensions without conscious awareness, which means that they don't have the free will to come and go, they are trapped there until you wake up consciousness and you begin to gather your fractals. This is a very common and very important process of the awakening process, because as I mentioned before, you're going to go through a process of waking up consciousness, and then you're going to begin to, after you heal your life, so you revisit all the memories in your life in order to reintegrate. Essentially, let's break it down. All you're doing is learning about love and fear, unity and separation. That's level 1. You learn about unity and separation by reviewing your life. When you have understood how to embody unity, you can then go to the next level, which is the reintegration of your past lives and your fractals of yourself, which is the regathering and the reawakening of consciousness of these fractals that exist within these other dimensional layers. These are the dimensional layers that you experience in dream time that allow you the opportunity to become lucid and bring back into conscious integration. But we don't do that. Most of us, most of us, we don't even know what we're doing or why we're doing it. But I'm explaining to you here what we're doing, because when we're dreaming, we are visiting these fractals of ourselves. And if you visit a fractal of yourself, but you don't become conscious, you might find that you're carrying out a lot of things that are counter-creative to the organism. And there's nothing wrong with that. Remember that here, we don't talk about things as right and wrong. We talk about cause and effect, and we talk about the experience of that cause and effect, because that's what we're here to do as organisms of infinite potential. But your ability to become conscious in these dream states is the opportunity to collect parts of yourself. So you do that by raising the vibrational frequency in the same way that you heal trauma in your waking state through your looking at your life. You integrate trauma in your fractalized expression within many dimensional layers. And you're not only doing that in this lifetime, you're doing that in all of your lives, because again, it is about the experience. But the only way you're going to understand the experience is through the integration process. It's the reunification, the alchemization. See, the mechanism of alchemization isn't just about our organism becoming a conduit or a transduction organism. It is about, as a greater organism participant in this multiverse, you now become an organism of healing, which means simply becoming whole. That's what healing means. It means to become whole, to remember the fractals of yourself in, hold on, one moment, in which you become the all, okay? So you now become this entire giant organism that is now part of the whole, and you are conscious in this sphere, in this sphere, in this sphere, in all the spheres. You become conscious. Essentially, you become a hyper-productive organism within the greater collective. What it means to be productive is this. Let me clarify that you are a creator. So remember that our natural state as a fractal of infinite potential is to create. That's the whole point of having this potential, is that you can create with it if you want to. You can also destroy with it. Okay, so the way that we utilize these energies and in through as the embodied experience is completely up to you. But we essentially become a unified field. And Gurdjieff talked about how evolved souls become planets, and then galaxies, and then universes. Okay, so you are a little human learning to be the universe, and then multiverses. One of the things that I saw in my hypnotherapy, in the downloads of my sessions, was everything I'm sharing with you now, but also that we live in a DNA strand. We exist within a DNA strand. And there is a lot of beautiful, beautiful scientific research that actually talks about how the universe is essentially a spiral, much like the function of a DNA strand. Its expression and the way that it stores massive amounts of information within the cellular level of these of every particle in this universe is also oscillating and maintaining these. Okay. And the field that connects all of these things, that allows us to access this information that transcends our physical body from this little body, is through this field, through the morphogenetic field. Okay, so the concept of spirals then is really one of the most fascinating aspects of our journey through the cycles of ascension, because we create geometric expressions with our DNA. We create geometric expressions, in this earth as we come into our highest expression. But also we are participating in creating geometric expressions in the greater whole. Okay, so every single one of the planets has their own vibrational frequency, just like we in our physical bodies, and the human race has its own vibrational frequency. Okay, so that is what I want to share with you in part in regards to the lecture for today's topic. But we're going to go into a meditation right now where we're going to take a look at the integration of these spiral patterns. And really, this work is essentially an entire workshop, and I'm going to be hosting this workshop next month based on all of the information that we're learning here in this series in order to understand how to deprogram these spirals, how to do that healing that I just mentioned in our lifetime, and begin to access the information in our past lives, which are simultaneous lives, and then in our dream state. Okay, these are the three realms that in this human experience we have to learn how to master and navigate. Okay, waking state, DNA, ancestral lineage, past lives, the DNA of the earth, and then our dream state, the interdimensional DNA, the DNA that begins to access beyond this dimensional layer. Okay, so we are learning how to integrate these aspects of ourselves in order to come into true unity, the embodiment of true unity consciousness. Okay, so before I start my meditation, let me come in here, and I'm going to if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and put them in capital letters, and I will be so happy to answer them. Okay. What is in the sixth? What, Geraldine? What is the 16th dimension like? So every single one of the dimensional layers, essentially, again, there's many ways to answer this question, because dimensions have different ways of how they express. But to simplify it, and actually this is a good way to talk about it. Each one of these dimensions has manifolds in which information is expressed in a certain way. So the more complex and the higher the dimension, so let me put it this way, the higher the dimension, the more complex the geometric structure. And we see this in sacred geometry, which is geometry. Let me see if I can find that. I don't have that with me today, so let me answer that question later on in this challenge, actually, because I do have it, but not in this presentation. But essentially, each one of these, if you can look over here, these complex geometric structures are showing how information is expressed in higher dimensional layers. The higher the dimension, the more complex the geometric structure, which also means that the organisms that exist in those dimensional layers at the cellular level mirror the complexity of that geometry. In the same way that our DNA has geometric expressions, the way that it creates coil formations that look like petals and flowers, in the same way our galaxy does, in these dimensional layers, they are even more complex. So this is why when we see interdimensional beings, they look the way that they do. Their entire organism functions differently. Their brains are larger, their bodies are smaller. Their biology is an expression of the demands of the physics of that dimensional layer. Okay, and the physics are set on the construct of the geometric laws. Essentially, all DNA in all organisms, when it's turned on and off, the more genes you turn on in an organism, the more complex and the more complex their geometric structure becomes. Okay, so I guess I need to explain that a little deeper, but when DNA is activated all the way, it becomes a sphere. Okay, so when all 44 genes are turned on, the organism is much like a sphere. It functions much like a sphere. And you can take a look at Euler's equation, which is a good way to explain what I'm talking about. For those of you that are into mathematics and the geometric expressions of that, but it creates a sphere. That is exactly what occurs when there's a holographic expression of all these genes turned on. So when we see these organisms, they are super highly activated DNA structures. Okay. What do the worlds look like there? Well, from the worlds that I have traveled to personally, everything from the living organisms that you see there are also following that. The way that they digest water, or whether they even eat at all, would depend on these DNA and the kind of genes that are turned on. The organisms that can be created really are infinite. Okay. The planets that are existing in these dimensional planes, planets from our filtered expression, because we see the spherical structures, because that's the physics of this universe help us see it in spherical structures. When you get to higher dimensional layers, what we know as planets can be something completely different. Okay, it can be something completely different. It's a different dimension, different laws. It doesn't function by the same laws that we're familiar with. So everything kind of changes based on that. And I think it's very important to understand this. And what I'm sharing with you, not only am I sharing it with you based on, the most advanced physics that we can possibly reach to help us understand these universal bodies outside of our dimension, but also we're looking at the information that experiencers bring to us, because experiencers that have actually traveled to some of these worlds talk about, their experiences there, the way that the planets looked, the way that they felt, whether there was gravity, no gravity, the kind of physics that exist within these realms, the organisms that exist, the way that they live. It's very interesting to listen to these experiencers and the kind of incredibly advanced technologies that us humans cannot even fathom. So we can kind of pull from some of that information. Okay. What is the dimension I went to? I felt love as a place, not a feeling. That's beautiful. That sounds a lot like this dimension, actually, because in this dimension, love is definitely, it can be anything. It is all, and that can be experienced as a whole. All right, guys, let's get into our meditation. I want you to get nice and comfortable. Breathing deeply. Go ahead and anchor yourself down to the center of the earth. Go ahead and visualize a sphere around your body. You're going to go ahead and shrink your first 3 chakras. Open your heart, your throat, your third eye. Go ahead and activate the 7th and your 8th chakra. Meaning expanded around your body. Go ahead and come fully into your body as you come into absolute stillness. You should be able to feel and observe your breath. Let's go ahead and bring from the center of the earth a powerful ray of green earth life comes rushing up into the body, creating a vortex of frequency around you. Go ahead and bring source, cosmic energy from the crown of your head, combining with the green earth energy. You're going to take 10% of that, take it back down to the center of the earth. Go ahead and take 80% of that, send it up your spine from the crown of your head, creating a fountain of energy coating the outside of your field. You're going to take that final 10%, bring it into the body now, infuse it into your physical body, and send that life force to all parts of the body that require more attention, more love. Fill your body up. Okay. So as you're here, I want you to begin to observe now the past week. I want you to see yourself very closely. I want you to take a look at the emotions that most come up for you in the past week. Okay, I want you to go back now to the past month as you begin to observe the emotions that most come up for you in the past 30 days. This is going to incrementally begin to awaken awareness of patterns that you are expressing through the subconscious mind. Go ahead and take yourself back to the past year as you begin to observe the repetitive patterns over the past year. Okay, any strong emotion that begins to come up, allow yourself to observe it. I want you to take yourself back now to the very beginning of time. I want you to take yourself back to your mother's womb. Go ahead and take yourself there. I want you to observe the emotions that come up the most for you in your mother's womb. Notice how those emotions impacted you. Is it the mother, the father that is feeling this emotion, or you? Go ahead and tune into that. Without any judgment, just observing carefully what comes up. Go ahead and identify the emotion now that comes up the most for you. As you sit absolutely present with this emotion, gently allow yourself to begin to recall the memories that trigger and are linked to this memory. So now that you're here, I want you to begin to observe all of these memories that you've just identified. I want you to look at yourself in these scenarios, carefully observing yourself. I want you to acknowledge what needs to be acknowledged by looking at yourself, any suffering that you might be experiencing, any programs of separation that are a result of these experiences. And as you begin to observe the people from which we inherited these beliefs, it could be a guardian, it could be a parent, it could be a family friend, it could be someone else that triggers these emotions in you. Go ahead and observe that emotion in your body. What is it? What comes up for you? And as you identify, there will be an emotion that is very strong for you. I want you to identify that emotion, and I want you to be absolutely present with that emotion. I want you to observe that emotion in your body. Notice the parts of the body that begin to tense up. Notice if the belly tenses up. Sometimes these reactions can be very subtle. So I want you to pay very close attention to your body. Some of you are completely disconnected from your body when it comes to emotions. Some of you don't even know names of emotions or cannot identify what they feel like. So I want you to be very gentle with you and use simple words like feeling words, okay? So for example, if you feel tightness in the belly, just see what would you relate that tightness to if it were an emotion, if it were a feeling or a sensation. How would you describe that? I want you to verbalize it, because the verbalization is the expression and the release. Every time we verbalize, we are releasing, we are creating a vibrational frequency that allows the magnetic pull to pull that out of the body. Essentially, it pulls forward. because again, through resonance, the particles in the body that are in resonance with that word come online and then link into a neural pathway in the brain. So you recognize what you're feeling by speaking it out. Okay, this is a very important part. It allows the mind-body connection. These neural pathways are essentially what we want to identify so we can understand how to break them. Okay, so as you identify those repeating programs that you're, observing, just take a look at what would it be the opposite of this state. So for example, let's say there are emotions of profound unfairness or anger or something like this. This is the example we used. If you have this emotion in your body, what would it look like to embody the opposite of that? And what are some of the things that make it threatening to embody this? Okay, so go ahead and identify that. Notice how we are looking for truth. And truth is always healing for the body. Okay, even if it's a difficult truth, even if it's truth in the direction of something completely unknown, if it isn't right now, in the future, it will provide a gateway for healing for the physical body because it's an expansion, it's an opening, it's an awareness. Again, remember the fractals of yourself that become aware of themselves through truth. Okay, so just allow yourself to embody this truth that you're identifying. And as you identify the opposite of that, I want you to notice if you are familiar with that opposite, or if you have never felt it before, chances are you're not very familiar with it. Chances are you barely are familiar with it, and it can be difficult to name it out. Okay, so gently allow yourself to identify the opposite. You're going to describe the opposite in terms of emotions. Okay, so in our example of anger, what would be the opposite of anger? Okay, you might come up with acceptance. You might come up with forgiveness. You might come up with freedom. You might feel fear. And so the opposite of fear would be the next question. Okay, so the opposite of fear would be love. Okay, so go ahead and embody that. So the highest vibrational frequency that you reach, that's the one that we want to apply. So if you ended up in love or some similar emotion, allow yourself to take a look at that emotion and what color would it be if it were a color? Okay, so in this example, we're using love to alchemize this anger, this fear, and then this anger. We're going to take a look at all of the things within this memory. We're going to infuse it with this color of love. You're going to infuse yourself. If you're looking at many memories, I want you to infuse all the fractals of yourself with this love. Go ahead and see that now. Right now, you are accessing the DNA of the earth because you're beginning to look at the memories of yourself, but you're also beginning to take a look at the memories of other lives that are influencing these experiences. So when you begin to shift the vibrational frequency of these parts of you by applying the new color, the new information, the new frequency, these organisms can shift. They grow their light. Okay, so this is you. These are parts of you that you are working on right now. So go ahead and allow these fractals to begin to absorb that love into their very soul essence of themselves, into their core essence. Breathe deeply, breathing deeply, always remembering to breathe. Okay, and go ahead and release. I want you to see all the fractals of yourself merging into one. And you're going to take a look at your fractal. You're going to see a bunch of cords connecting to your fractal. These cords are connecting to all the people, places, and things in this lifetime and many lifetimes on the planet Earth that you have repeated this pattern. Okay, so this belief system, remember the emotion was anger, we transmuted to love. So all of the fractals of yourself that are trapped in the vibrational frequency of anger are the ones that you're looking at here. So go ahead and observe, or whatever the emotion is for you. That's just my own example. Take a look at the earth, take a look at the cords. I want you to begin to gently neutralize those cords, inhaling deeply, severing the cord on their end and inhaling your life force back into your body. Bring it back in. Breathing deeply, consciously, bringing back your life force into your body. Very good. And this probably might take you longer because you can spend a lot of amazing meditation time taking a look at the fractals. And I highly suggest that you do, because that's you activating your DNA. Okay. So as you begin to reintegrate these fractals of yourself, you're going to see the many of them healing, turning into one cell. Go ahead and see that beautiful healed fractal in front of you as it illuminates into a whole cell. And bring it into your body now. You're going to integrate it into the root, the sacral, solar, heart, throat, third eye, 7 bodies in, 7 bodies out. All charges down to 0, negative, infinite. As you allow your body to begin to release any negative emotions that it may have been left behind, or that we haven't had time to address during this time, you can either continue addressing them, or you can close up your practice. And we're going to close it by beginning to open the root chakra back into a balanced state. Going up to the sacral, opening it back into a balanced state. The solar. Your heart expanding very wide. Your throat. And your third eye. Very good. You just healed your body. I want you to allow yourself to activate the 9th dimensional layer of your body. And why we want to activate, okay, another layer to the spiral concept is that the more layers you activate in your body during waking state, the more you're opening the channels of that cyclical life force to enter into the body, that primordial life force. And we want that because the more we activate up there, the more it becomes activate here, as above, so below. So you're going to go up into the 10th. Go ahead and activate the 10th. Expand the 10th dimensional layer. Expand the 11th. Expand the 12th. Expand the 13th. Expand the 14th. The 15th. The 16th. The 17th. The 18th. The 19th. And the 20th. 21. 22. 23. And 24. And above you is a powerful white light of source. I want you to bring that white light down into your body now. Anchor it through, down into the center of the body, down through the perineum, into the center of the earth. Go ahead and activate the chakra between the heart and the solar plexus. As you activate that chakra, expand it, integrating the lower dantian, the middle, and the upper dantian. Okay, so you are essentially healing the different layers of your genetic hologram at this moment. So allow yourself to anchor. You're going to open this chakra in the center. And you're going to create a pole of light that runs to the center of the body, out through the back, around the parameter of the earth. And you are anchoring through your source cord. Okay. So at the center of those two cross sections of energy that run through your body, they look like this actually, right? You're going to see a white light. I want you to expand that light. That is your light. So go ahead, expand your light body. Very good. Excellent work. Allow yourself to come back into the state. Very good, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. It was such an honor to share this time with you. I want to thank you for following and this challenge and the work and the meditation. You guys are incredible. If you guys found value in this video today, please like and subscribe, and please do share it with anybody that you feel might also like this information. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the super chats, guys. I love you so much. And yeah, let me see if I have any more questions here. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Let me see if I have any more questions here. Hold on a second. Here. Do all humans have alien implants that monitor us? No. So implants is a topic for another day, but implants are interdimensional biological and holographic technology that binds to the body. And it is created from the human, and it's created also from the beings. So no, they don't always have the same thing. All right. All right, guys, have an amazing night. See you soon.